Hello, welcome to An Old Man Running. In the first marathon I ran in 2022 in the summer, I was so focused on the running component of training for a marathon that I really hadn't appreciated the care and thought that has to go into nutrition in the week before and during the marathon race itself. So I resolved to make sure that I got that as right as I possibly could for the marathon in Valencia. So my rough understanding of the science of how your body is dealing with nutrition during a marathon race is that your body burns a combination of fat and carbohydrate, and the carbohydrate is burning and is in the form of glycogen stored in your muscles and also an extra store in your liver. At slow paces, when your heart rate is still well in the aerobic zone, your body is able to deal with burning of fat to get the necessary energy that you need, even though fat is a less efficient fuel than the carbohydrate. But once you're getting your heart rate up to a certain level and you start to race, then your body is tapping into those glycogen stores that you have and burning carbohydrate, which is the more efficient fuel. The issue is that you've only got, it varies from person to person, but you've only got maybe a couple of hours typically of glycogen stores in your body. So once you burn out those glycogen stores, your body's back to burning fat, which is significantly less efficient. And there's so many other things going on with your body late in the race that all of a sudden your pace can significantly drop. And that's the kind of concept of what hitting the wall means. It means you. So there are two things that you can do to improve your capability in a race in terms of fuel. One of those is to increase the amount of glycogen that you have stored that your body can tap into. So make your tank bigger. And one way of doing that is to carbo load in advance of the race and the week before the race. And then the second thing that you can do is to keep topping up your glycogen tank during the race. Now, you're burning off your glycogen probably faster than your stomach could cope with topping it up during the race, so you're always going to have a net depletion, but you can at least address it by taking, traditionally people take gels that are either sugar-based or more recently starch-based to do that. And so a typical strategy then in advance of a marathon is to carb load leading up to the race, 3 to 4 days before the race, and then take nutrition that's very heavy in fast digesting carbohydrate, sugars, or stuff, or fast digesting starch during the race itself. Most of the literature that you read says that in the week leading up to the marathon you should steadily build up your intake of carbohydrates as a proportion of the total amount of calories that you're taking in. So not necessarily to increase the total amount of calories you're normally eating, but certainly to increase that carbohydrate proportion. So the wisdom seems to be that you go from somewhere around 3 grams of carbohydrate per pound of your body weight to around 4 closer to the day of the race. And so for me, at about 175 pounds, I was going from 525 grams of carbohydrate a day up to somewhere in the region of 700. That's a huge amount of carbohydrate to eat, because there are 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate. So if you're eating 700 grams of carbohydrate in a day, that's 2,800 calories from carbohydrate alone, which is why they tell you to up the percentage of your carbohydrate as a total. But even if you get that to 80%, that's still a total calorific intake the day before your marathon at my weight of somewhere around 3,400, 3,500 calories, which is a lot of eating. And the challenge for me the week of the Valencia marathon was that it was in Valencia and I live in Florida, and so I was on the road traveling for much of that period, and that significantly limits your options, because especially in restaurants, the amount of fat and protein that can sneak into a meal that you think is very high in carbohydrates can be significant. You go out for pasta and meatballs, there's a ton of protein creeping into that. And then, of course, there's a huge amount of fat generally in restaurant type meals, and with 9 calories per gram of fat, that can significantly reduce your carbohydrate ratio as well. What I ended up doing basically while I was traveling was having a diet that was largely just fruit and oatmeal. I took instant oatmeal with me, could make that in the hotel. Fruit's obviously easy to get. Then I was just grabbing bread. Like I was eating giant baguettes. I think you have to accept that the week before the marathon, your diet's going to be pretty dull. I was able to go from about 50% on the Monday to ending up about 80% of my intake carbohydrates by the day before the race. And frankly, I challenge anybody to get beyond 80%. You see articles saying get 90% of your calories from carbohydrate, and I just don't see how you can do it, because you look at, for example, there's a bag of oatmeal here. If you look at the nutrition on the back here, so in a third of a cup here, there are 6 grams of protein, 2.5 grams of fat, and 23 grams of carbohydrate. That's a significant amount of non-carbohydrate, even in oatmeal. So in terms of the day of the race, I went in pretty well prepared, knowing what my stomach could and couldn't handle. Just prior to the race, I did a couple things. I really like the UCAN powder, and I also mix it with the UCAN hydrate powder, and this contains electrolytes and so on. And the unflavoured version of the UCAN with this tastes okay, and it gives you that combination of the electrolytes and the carbohydrate boost in the one drink. So I take that about 40 minutes before the race, and then I had a bottle with me that I could sip on during the first hour. So I actually used 3 different supplements. The first of these is the UCAN energy gel. This is a starch based rather than a sugar based gel, and it actually has a much thinner consistency. The downside of it is it's a pretty big packet. If I compare it here to a goo, you can see it's a lot more to carry around. In terms of calories as well, you're only getting 70 calories from something this size versus 100 from a goo here. I don't feel you could go through the whole marathon with these, but what I like about this is it's gentler on my stomach than a sugar-based one. The energy release associated with this, if you look up the UCAN site, it'll tell you all about it, but the energy release related with this is a much more even one, whereas you get much more of a hit from the goo gels. The other gel that I discovered and I really like is this Crank Sports e-gel. So this pack here, which is you can see is slightly smaller than the UCAN ones in terms of carrying around. This has 150 calories in it, and it's also not sugar based, it's more of a starch based, and so again gentler on your stomach, but with one caveat, and that caveat is that when I don't take this with fluids, it kind of gums me all up and I really can't handle it. So I have to be very careful that I time when I take this with being able to take some fluid in. And it doesn't need to be a ton of fluid, but you definitely need it in combination with this. But again, I like this because it's significantly gentler on my stomach than the goos are. Again, like the UCAN, it's a slower release, so it's a more even blast of energy that you're getting. And you're getting more calories than you are with the UCAN. So I like this as part of my nutrition plan. And then also I really do like the goos. This is one with caffeine in it, and I really like this tri-berry. I also like the strawberry banana, which doesn't have caffeine in it. So essentially what I did was put together a rotation of all of those and plan the use of them out to both not give my stomach too much work to do by taking goos all the time, but also to give me a progressive increase in calories per hour as the race went on. So I started off at about 160 calories per hour, and I finished trying to get to about 250 calories per hour towards the end of the race when my glycogen stores were really depleted. In total, I plan to end up taking 9 of these supplements. And what I did was plan the use of them in accordance with where the water and fluid stops were in the race, so that in particular with the e-gels I was able to time taking them with some fluids. And it was as simple as I looked up in advance of the race where those stops were, and I just had a piece of paper here and I wrote on it, the kilometre marking and the particular nutrition I was going to take at that point. And it worked very well for me because, your mind starts to get a bit doolally as you progress in a marathon. You really need this, or I do anyway, to help me remember what gels I'm taking at what point. So overall, 9 portions of these in a race, no matter how gentle they are in your stomach, can start to add up. And by the 8th one, I was really kind of struggling to comfortably get those in my stomach and digest it. And in fact, although I had a goose scheduled for kilometre 40, I just couldn't face taking it, and I didn't. And I noticed the difference from not taking it. My last couple of kilometres were a bit slower, and I could have done with that boost, but I just couldn't handle it. So you've just got to adjust your strategy a little bit in the race. As a fallback, in case I screwed up the water stops in terms of taking my gels, I've carried in my pocket one of these sort of collapsible flasks. So at the beginning it was a pain. I've got 2 of these in my pockets. I just like to have that kind of security blanket of having this extra one here, and I did use it. In terms of carrying all of this stuff, it's a lot to carry. 9 of these, I've got the 2 bottles. I've experimented with belts, I've experimented with a vest, and what I've ended up doing basically is just finding a way to stuff it all in the pockets of my shorts. And I use these shorts. These are the Vuori brand. They're Stockton shorts, and they're kind of long, as you can see. They've got really deep pockets, and so basically I've got the 2 water bottles, one in each pocket, and I've got the back pocket here, some gel stuffed in here. One of the water bottles has got like a bit on the side here. I had my next gel up stuffed in that. It was a bit of a logistical challenge to get them all in, and at the beginning of the race, actually in the first kilometre, I felt these actually falling off me. I had to pull this one out of the pocket, and luckily it's got a little bit of a handle here, and I wrapped that around, and it wasn't too inconvenient. By kilometre 7 or 8, I had drunk all of this. My daughter was actually cheering me on in the course, and I was able to pass that off to her. So I think it's very important then to make sure that you know exactly what you're going to be wearing to carry your nutrition in the race, because if you're experimenting on the race day, you could get it all wrong. I think I got lucky at the Valencia Marathon because the water and the Gatorade that they were handing out was in little mini bottles. And so it was really easy to just run with a little mini bottle, take some, either finish it off or carry it for a little bit. And that really helped with the digestion of my goose. When you're running in a race and you're just picking up the paper cups and you have to quickly slug it over, and I'm terrible at getting, not choking or getting the right amount of liquid out of those. I think it might have been a little trickier for me to manage. And so having my own mixes in my pocket made me a little bit self-contained, which was good. I was able to skip a couple of water stops. And if in another race in the future it's not the nice water bottles and it's the little cups and I screw those up, then at least I know I've got those to fall back on. So that's something to think about. But as always, it's a trade-off between, the weight and the discomfort of carrying stuff like that versus using the stations. In terms of the products that I've showed you, I've got no sponsorship or connection with any of those products. These are just ones that have worked for me, but I would encourage you to consider combining the concept of starch-based and sugar-based gels during a race to give you that balance and make it easier in your stomach. There's plenty of options out there. And also, don't forget the electrolyte component of it. Make sure that in addition to water during the race, you're topping up your electrolytes. Thanks for listening. Love to hear your own nutrition strategies, where you think I've got it right or wrong. Maybe some tips that you think would be useful for my 3rd marathon. And if you've enjoyed the video, please give me a like, subscribe if you can, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video for an old man.